Hi everybody, it's Michaela. So welcome to your next session of your Health and Social Care course and your Dementia course with Plato Training. So for today we're going to be looking at 2 units. We're not going to finish the full units today, so we're looking at Unit 23 and Unit 1. Unit 23 is looking at dementia and what it is and looking how we can care for people with dementia, whereas Unit 1 is a bit more technical because it's part of your Level 2 qualification in dementia awareness. So your aims and objectives of the session today are to explain what is meant by the term dementia and to understand the different areas of the brain that are affected by dementia. So I'm just going to talk through a little bit on here just for a moment there. So because we're now working towards a Level 2 qualification, you are going to have to write sort of considerably more than you have been writing for your Level 1 work. When we're looking at what is meant by the term dementia, we can't just summarise that in one sentence. We're looking at all the different angles of what dementia actually means. When we look at the second learning outcome, so understand the different areas of the brain that are affected by dementia, you will have seen on the first slide of this video that there was a picture of the brain and the different areas of the brain. So before we can understand what dementia might do to those areas of the brain, we need to understand what those areas of the brain should be doing. So it will get a little bit technical, but you should be able to rewind, pause and fast forward as you wish. Hopefully you won't fast forward, hopefully you'll sit and listen. So we're going to take this nice and steady. Okay. So first of all, I wondered if you would like to become a dementia friend. A dementia friend is it's an initiative that's run by the Alzheimer Society, so I'm a dementia friend. It's completely optional, you don't have to do this. If you do wish to do this, you can follow this link here. And there's a couple of different ways you can become a dementia friend. You can join a webinar, you can watch a short video, or you can do some extra training on it. And what this shows is that you've got an awareness of dementia and sort of shows a bit more passion about the subject. It's something you could perhaps add to your CV. They sent me a badge in the post. I'm not sure if they're still doing that with COVID at the moment, but hopefully they'll be able to send you one out shortly, so you could perhaps wear a badge in your workplace in the future. Like I said, completely optional, don't feel pressured to do that, but I think it's a nice thing to do if you are happy to do so. As always, if you could please look out for the green box on the right hand side that shows you which of the slides on the video relate to the different questions in your work booklets. So I've already mentioned this before, but I'll just go through it again. So part of your lesson for today, most of it actually, is Level 2. So many of the questions in this chapter are going to be at Level 2 for today. Likewise with the rest of the week as well. So you need to make sure that you're giving lots of detail, lots of content, so that you are meeting the criteria. If you are wondering which questions are at Level 2, they have a D in the brackets afterwards. So in that little reference that I've put in, so that when I'm marking, I know what I'm marking. The D in the bracket stands for dementia, and those are the criteria that are at Level 2, but I'll be talking you through that as we go. So some important words for this unit. So dementia, a disability caused by diseases or conditions that affect the brain and that causes problems with the way the brain functions. Symptoms, a physical or a mental indicator of disease or injury. Cerebral hemispheres, the key areas in the brain that are affected by conditions and diseases that result in dementia. These cerebral hemispheres take up most of the brain. Depression, so severe dejection accompanied by feelings of hopelessness, feeling or being inadequate. Stress, being under physical, mental or emotional pressure. Delirium, mental confusion and changing levels of consciousness. Risk factors, the elements in somebody's history or lifestyle that increase or decrease the chances of developing a particular condition. So, This relates to question 1, but it's more of an overview to begin with. So understanding dementia. So a bit of an introduction really. So there are over 100 different conditions that can cause symptoms of dementia. The most common ones that we're going to look at are Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and frontotemporal dementia. Now, the way this is written is they are causes of dementia. So you may have heard of these as different types of dementia, but dementia itself is a set of symptoms, okay? The causes of those symptoms are different within the brain, so therefore these are the causes of dementia. But if you slip up and say types, that's okay. So I would like you to list the main causes or types of dementia as were on the previous screen there, and that's really just to introduce you to that topic. So relating to question 2, now there is quite a lot of information coming, so do bear with. So dementia is a very complex syndrome. It is a complex syndrome that affects brain functioning. It causes irreversible loss of cognitive, which is mental capacities and memory, such that there is a decline in a person's behaviour and ability to function socially, physically and emotionally over time. So that definition there comes from the World Health Organization, or WHO. You may have heard lots about those during the pandemic there, WHO. So what does dementia mean? Now, dementia is an umbrella term. There are over 100 different types of neurological disorders that doctors may recognise as dementia. During this course, we're just going to look at 4 of those causes or types of dementia. And again, those 4 are Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, and frontal temporal lobe dementia. So dementia is not a diagnosis in itself. So just because somebody may go to the GP and the GP may say, oh yes, it looks like they're getting dementia, that's not going to be the diagnosis in itself. So dementia is the description of a disability that results in the damage to the brain. It's a particular condition or disease that causes the damage in the brain, which then causes the dementia. And these causes are, again, Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, vascular and frontotemporal dementia as our examples that we're going with. So you may hear people say, oh, my mother's been diagnosed with dementia. But it's much more important to remember that there is way more to dementia than just that one word. It's a convenient way of describing the disability, but it's not actually a diagnosis. A diagnosis would be Alzheimer's disease or vascular. It wouldn't be just dementia on its own. Now I've got you some facts and figures. So it's not a normal part of the aging process. The risk of developing dementia does increase as we get older, but that does not mean that we will all get dementia in older age. The likelihood of someone developing dementia at age 60 to 69 years old is 1% of women and 1.5% for men. Whereas over the age of 90, it's 33% chance for women and 25% chance for men. So you can see that the risk of developing it does increase with age, but still only 1/3 of ladies and 1/4 of men will develop dementia over age 90. So it's not everybody that's going to get dementia. We don't really know how many people in the UK have dementia. The last census was in 2011, so we're due a new census next year in 2021. Back in 2011, the figures were around 670,000 people over 65 who had dementia. But it wasn't necessarily factual, it was an estimate. A year later, the World Health Organization thought that it was probably more around the 850,000 mark in 2012. So dementia is a growing condition. It is so important that we learn about it because there are going to be more and more people diagnosed with this, this set of symptoms here. 7.7 million new people are being told they have dementia around the world every year. That calculates to somebody being diagnosed with dementia every 4 seconds. So the number of people with dementia worldwide is expected to nearly double every 20 years to 65.7 million in 2030 and up to 115.4 million by 2050. So dementia is a term used to describe a disability caused by diseases or conditions that affect the brain function. And we've already said it's not a normal part of the aging process. Now the word dementia is quite closely linked to the word demented. So this sometimes results in images of people being mad or disturbed or aggressive or dangerous. And as a result of that, there is quite a fear of dementia. And there's certain expectations of how people will behave if they had it. Because if someone was to say, you are demented, you are mad, you are disturbed, you get those images in your brain, and it's not right for us to have those stereotypes of dementia in the same way. Most people have very little understanding of what dementia is like and what life is like for those people who do have it. Some more myths and stereotypes here. There are plenty associated with dementia. So because there are lots of myths, there's a misunderstanding of the disease, there's quite often a stigma, and of course discrimination. These myths and stereotypes may stop people or their families from seeking diagnosis and treatment, and they may stop people from accessing the help and support and talking about dementia. So the statements there, people with dementia are crazy, they're mad, they're senile. These statements are incorrect because most people that live with dementia actually live in their own homes and they care for themselves, or they have support of family members around them to help. But some people do live in residential care or nursing homes if they have dementia as well. So the stigma of dementia does need to be removed. Previously, there was a stigma around cancer because people used to assume that cancer meant death. Nowadays, with the advance of science, people don't often associate cancer with immediate death like they used to. So to remove the stigma of dementia, people need to develop their own awareness and understanding of dementia. So dementia is usually progressive. This means symptoms will gradually increase as the brain becomes more damaged, so the disability will become harder to live with. So think of dementia as damage to the brain, because that's what those causes of dementia that we looked at previously, like Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, frontotemporal, and Lewy body dementia, they're all causing damage to that brain, which causes the disability to progress as well. Now the speed at which those symptoms progress do vary from person to person, so the circumstances of the individual, like their physical and social environment, will make a difference. The individual's state of health and well-being, so outside of their their cause of dementia, what else is going on in their life, any medication they're taking, and the nature or condition causing the dementia as well. Some dementia causes do progress quicker than others. So symptoms of dementia, the common symptoms are memory loss, communication difficulties, and changes in behaviour or mood. So a lot of people, when they say, oh, dementia is where you're forgetting things, that's the memory loss side. But it's a lot more than that. That's just a third of those that we've got here. Communication can be difficult, and behaviour and mood can be quite dramatically affected, as we'll see as we move forward. So memory problems. People may find it harder to remember things that have just happened, or find it hard to understand what is happening when they're watching telly. So perhaps they are watching an episode of EastEnders and they just can't follow it. They've no idea what's going on, but it's something that they always enjoyed. Familiar routines can be affected. Things like going to the shop or making a meal can become very confusing and very difficult to remember. So memory problems aren't going to be continuous. They're not going to be there all the time, but they could become more and more frequent as time goes on. Communication difficulties. So communication can sometimes be really challenging. People may forget the right word for an everyday object, or they might forget people's names. Some people might struggle to recognise written information and find it hard to understand what someone is trying to tell them verbally. So struggling to understand the conversation and follow that. Maybe the written information is following, I don't know, a recipe that they've always used. Communication difficulties can also be made worse when someone has an age-related condition such as poor sight or poor hearing. If somebody already struggles with their sight, struggling to see, is struggling to hear, perhaps they're forgetting to put their glasses on or their hearing aids in, and it's going to make it even more tricky. Changes in behaviour or mood. So people with dementia may have sudden changes in behaviour and mood swings. They could be things like anger, frustration, or they could be the opposite and appear very low or very depressed. But sometimes people can also seem quite frightened or confused. The mood changes are caused by differing realities and difficulty being able to understand the world around them. And then because communication is so badly affected, it may be that the person is using that behaviour, negative or positive. If they're looking very low, it might be because they're feeling very low, but they cannot communicate that they feel very low. They may be frustrated that they can't find their toothbrush, but they can't remember the word for toothbrush, but they know they need to brush their teeth, but they can't communicate that with you because they can't tell you what they've lost. It's a very scary time. So what I would like you to do is to utilise the information that I've just shared with you to answer this question. So this question says, explain what is meant by the term dementia. So because you are describing at level 2, you need to ensure that you're using full sentences and developing paragraphs. For each paragraph, I would like to see 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph, and I'm looking for about 3 paragraphs there as well. You may want to write a little bit more than that. But I want you to really think about what is dementia, what does it mean to you. I don't want you to just copy things, I want you to really think about summarising and coming up with some of your own ideas. You may want to look at the Alzheimer's Society website there as well. So pause this video here whilst you answer that question. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at Alzheimer's disease. So what is Alzheimer's disease? It is the most common type of dementia in the UK, but the exact cause of it is not fully understood. But there are quite a number of things that increase your risk of developing it. So these include your age, getting older, if you've got a family history of the condition, untreated depression. So depression can be a symptom of Alzheimer's disease, but if you've got untreated depression, you're higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Lifestyle factors and conditions associated with cardiovascular disease. So when we say lifestyle factors regarding this part, we're looking at things like poor diet, not exercising, not moving around enough, not getting the heart pumping. And conditions associated with cardiovascular disease, so things like high cholesterol, again, poor diet leading to that. Anything to do with your heart, basically, heart attack, stroke. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, with around 60 to 80% of dementia cases being Alzheimer's. So what Alzheimer's does is it causes abnormal deposits of proteins in the brain, which makes it really difficult for the messages to get sent through clearly. Okay, so just think about there being some little nodules of protein and they're blocking the nerves. So if you look at, say, a strand of hair, if you look at that as your nerve in your brain, If there was something on top of that hair or the nerve, imagine it's like a little, I don't know, a peanut or something on top of the piece of hair, it's going to block the message that's being sent down your hair. And that's essentially the same thing in Alzheimer's disease. It's obviously not hair and peanuts, as my description says. It's the proteins blocking those nerve cells, and it's blocking those messages. There is also evidence of nerve cell damage and cell death in Alzheimer's disease as well, within the brain. So with Alzheimer's disease, people often have difficulty remembering things, but they can also become quite uninterested and quite depressed. In the later stages, communication becomes more tricky, people can make poor judgments. When we say about poor judgments, it may be that they are perhaps not taking care of their own health and safety, so like crossing the road without looking or pressing the button or going to the zebra crossing, etc. Or they may go outside in winter without wearing a coat or a jacket or a cardigan even. Poor judgments there. They get confused easily, and their behaviour can change from what has been considered as their normal personality. Over time, this can then affect the brain a lot more, and people can have problems with things like swallowing and walking and lots of difficulties there. So Alzheimer's disease is a progressive condition, which means that symptoms develop gradually over many years, and they eventually become much more severe, so it affects multiple brain functions. The first sign of Alzheimer's disease is usually minor memory problems, so forgetting a few things. An example there, so it could be forgetting about recent conversations or events, forgetting names of places and objects and things like that. I do have another video here that I would quite like you to watch. It's really beneficial for you to watch this video, so please do try and have a look at that one for us. Now that you've finished watching that video, I would like you to answer question 3. So what is Alzheimer's disease? So I've given you lots of information there. Please pause this video now so that you can answer this question. The next type of dementia we're going to look at is vascular dementia. So vascular dementia is much less common than Alzheimer's disease. It is only around 10% of cases of dementia. In vascular dementia, there are problems in the blood vessels within the brain. So if somebody is getting a diagnosis of vascular dementia, it's visible on a CT or an MRI scan, so a scan of the brain, and they can see the differences in the blood vessels. So vascular dementia is very different to Alzheimer's disease in the sense that it can cause impaired judgment, poor ability to plan, and difficulty getting organised. So we're going to have a look at those in a little bit more detail. So vascular dementia is caused by blood vessel problems. The blood vessel problems lead to a reduced blood flow, and this can result in damage to the cells because they do not receive oxygenated blood. So because those cells in the brain are not getting oxygenated blood, they can die because of a lack of oxygen. So I have a video for you here to help you to understand a little bit more about vascular dementia. This says, a daughter's perspective, my mum has dementia. So please make sure you have a look at that video. After you've watched that video, I would like you to answer question 4, what is vascular dementia? Pause this video now whilst you answer this question. The next one we're looking at is dementia with Lewy bodies. So Lewy bodies are clumps of protein that develop in the cortex, resulting in dementia. The clumps of protein can also be found in the cortex of people with Alzheimer's disease and with vascular dementia. So you're probably thinking, we've already looked at the proteins and that's Alzheimer's disease, and now you're telling me it's vascular as well. Yes, it is, but in Lewy bodies it's a lot more prominent. So those clumps of protein are in a particular place, and there's a lot more of them in that place. So Lewy bodies. What's the difference about Lewy bodies? So the most common difference of dementia with Lewy bodies is visual hallucinations, and lots of them. So sometimes other types of dementia can cause visual hallucinations, but they are way more common in Lewy body. The visual hallucinations are commonly about animals or people. Sometimes the hallucinations are not actually visual. They can sometimes be audio, like hearing sounds that are not real. So perhaps hearing somebody talk to them, or hearing somebody screaming and shouting at them, or hearing animal noises as well. There have been reports as well about hearing music. So what is dementia with Lewy bodies? You can write that in here. Make sure you write in the difference as well. What makes it different to the others? Pause this video here whilst you write this answer. Frontotemporal dementia. So frontotemporal dementia is an uncommon type of dementia because it mainly affects just the front and the sides of the brain. So if you think about yourself, that would be where your forehead is and where your temples are, hence the term temporal. It causes problems with behaviour and language. So frontotemporal dementia is an umbrella term for a number of diseases which can include Pick's disease, so you may wish to research this if you want to know a bit more about that. With frontotemporal dementia, people tend to be quite a bit younger, so they tend to develop the condition around 45 years to 60 years of age, although some people can be younger and some may be older. The thing with frontotemporal dementia is that people don't survive as long. They generally survive a shorter length of time than those people who have Alzheimer's disease. So some symptoms and problems that can come with frontotemporal dementia. They can become quite insensitive or rude. They can act impulsively. They may show some repetitive behaviours like humming, rubbing their hand, tapping their feet, or routines like walking the same route. Mental abilities, difficulty working things out, needing to be told what to do, poor planning, judgment and organisation, and becoming easily distracted. So I'd like you to tell me something about frontotemporal dementia. What is it? What is your understanding of this? Pause this video here so that you can write this question now. We're now going to look at how does dementia affect the brain. So I've brought you back to this image of the brain where it shows the different areas of the brain which are nicely colour coded and labelled for you. So just have a look at that for me there. So we've got the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the brain stem, the cerebellum, the occipital lobe, and the parietal lobe. So like I said before, we need to understand about the normal brain before we can learn about how dementia may affect these components of the normal brain. So the brain is the most complex organ within the body. It's the control center for everything that we do. It controls our movement, speech, memory and behavior. It keeps our bodies working and controls how we experience the world through our senses. So like our sight, our hearing, our sense of smell, our taste. The brain is made up of billions of nerve cells. These nerve cells are cells with long tentacles, a bit like an octopus. The tentacles connect cells to each other and pass messages through chemicals and tiny electrical currents. So what can happen if the brain gets injured or gets a disease? So if the disease or injury breaks the connection between the cells, they will die and the functions they perform will stop. Some cells in our body can regrow if they're injured, like think about if you cut your hand, the skin will heal. Our brain cannot do that, so the nerve cells in our brain cannot do that. They will just die and they will stop functioning. Dementia is a disease that affects these nerve cells, therefore dementia affects the brain by causing nerve cells to die and they cannot be repaired. The brain will shrink with age. The neurons and neurotransmitters can change, the blood vessels in the brain can change, and inflammation of the brain can occur. But people age in different ways. Some people notice themselves steadily declining, whilst other people will continue to improve their knowledge and skill set. And this is why not all people will develop dementia, but there is a risk that it can happen as we age. So, we're going to look at the four main sections of the brain here. So we've got the cerebral hemispheres. This is the grey matter, which is then divided into the four lobes that each do a different job. And those are what we're going to have a look at more soon. So the grey matter, you may have heard of that term or you may not. The limbic system, this is the centre of the brain and it's responsible for learning and memory. The cerebellum, this controls things like balance, movement and your posture. The brain stem, this controls your body functions like breathing, your blood pressure, your heartbeat. So the cerebral hemispheres, these make up the majority of your brain. So they are the key areas that are affected by conditions and diseases that result in dementia. So if you hear the term of grey matter, this is the area that is meant by that term. The cerebral hemispheres are divided into four lobes, and here we have the names of those lobes. So we have the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, the frontal lobe, and the temporal lobe. So the parietal lobe, what does it do? So it manages language and touch. It manages complex activities like detailed movements and tasks such as spelling words and calculating numbers. So how can this be affected by dementia? If there's any damage to this area, that means that people may begin to lose skills that they once had in, say, being able to work out finances or writing letters. Here we have a little bit more information about the parietal lobe and what it does and how it may be affected. So please pause this video here to have a read of that. This is from the Alzheimer's disease website. The occipital lobe, what does it do? So this controls your vision. This allows you to see. How is it affected by dementia? So if there is damage in this lobe from a disease, it will affect your sight. But you have to remember that there are many other age-related or conditions or injuries that can affect sight. So just because somebody wears glasses or is struggling to see in older age, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to have a problem with their occipital lobe. There could be many other causes for this. Here again, we have some more information from the Alzheimer's Society website. So please pause this video and have a read of this. The frontal lobe. So what does the frontal lobe do? This controls behaviour, thinking, memory and movement. And how is this affected by dementia? So if there is damage to this lobe from a disease, then there are usually changes in people's behaviour. So previously we looked at frontotemporal dementia and we said that rudeness was part of it. So this is why, because the frontal lobe controls behaviour. Some people who may have been very quiet could all of a sudden become very loud. Someone outgoing and friendly could become really shy or withdrawn, or the other way around. Someone who's relaxed and laid back may become very anxious and worried about everything. So it can completely change somebody's personality. Here's a bit more information from the Alzheimer's Society website. So please pause this video to have a read of this part. The temporal lobe controls hearing, learning and feelings. It provides important functions for language, emotion and memory. So how is it affected by dementia? So if there's damage in the temporal lobe, it can cause difficulty in speech and communication. So people may forget words for objects or recall sounds. Find it difficult to recall sounds for everyday objects, like a dog or something. If you've got trouble with your speech and communication, it's going to be very difficult to join or remain in a conversation. The temporal lobe can also be affected in terms of emotion because we've got that it controls the functions for emotion. So people can become very angry or very sad for no real obvious reason. It can be difficult when this happens for the individual, but also for those around them, so like friends and family members as well. I have some more information here from the Alzheimer's Society website, so please pause this video here to have a read of this part as well. Now, we're now going to have you complete question 7. So describe the key functions of the brain that are affected by dementia. Now, you need to show your understanding of how dementia can affect those 4 areas. So I've broken this question down into those 4 areas. For each area of the brain, you need to demonstrate your understanding of what the normal function is and how dementia can affect it or change it. So, if you're summarizing, this part of the brain does this, this, and this. When somebody has dementia, it could be affected because it could cause this, this, and this. Okay, pause this video here whilst you complete this question. So that leaves us for the end of this session. So you should now have explained what is meant by the term dementia and have a much stronger understanding than we did before. And you should now understand that dementia affects the different areas of the brain, and it's not just a case of somebody is losing their memory. They're actually, having some quite bad damage to their brain cells. Okay, thank you for watching and listening to this video. I hope you found it helpful, and we shall see you all tomorrow.